Good evening, everybody, and welcome back. We have a terrific show for you tonight, and I'm thrilled to introduce my special guest, creator and letterer, SK. Welcome, Stephen.
Ah, thanks. I'm from Australia, so I've got good news for you. The world hasn't ended yet. So we live in the future, so the world's still turning. So check that
Right, yeah.
anywhere we will.
It's actually tomorrow for you, so you can tell us who won the game.
Oh no, I keep all my lottery winnings separately. So I keep lottery numbers and results separate. So I can be bribed us.
I'm really looking forward to chatting with you. We have a great topic for today. This is the top 11 fictional worlds. And we always have a set of rules when we make these lists. And today, effectively, the only rule to qualify for the list, there had to be at least 3 installments of the product, whether it was a movie, a book, or there's 1 or 2 video games as well. So as we go through with that, I'm hoping this will tie into some of your work a little bit, which I've been following. It's very interesting. And I know that you're one of the experts, I would say, on world building. And as we go forward, I'd like to chat with you a little about that. So we're going to launch right in to our number 11, which is Narnia by C.S. Lewis. Are you a C.S. Lewis fan at all?
I did. I read it mainly as a kid. So the line in which the wardrobe, the one thing which for me anyway, it's still aimed at a younger audience. So
Right.
unfortunately, Narnia, you kind of outgrow it a little bit. Like, look, don't get me wrong. There's still the magic when you first read it and all the rest of it. But there's Father Christmas in there and things like that. So you kind of a little bit outgrow it. And don't get me wrong, there are books targeted for that audience. So I loved it when I was young. But when the movies came out, I think I was a little bit aged out from that market. So,
Yeah.
but to see what you imagine in your head being brought to life, I still think, like, if I remember right, Liam Neeson did the Aslam, didn't he?
Right, I believe so. And it was, I think the first movie was really the best of
Yeah.
the ones they had done for it. And in particular, the intro was great, and the initial scenes of the wardrobe and where she comes out into the
Yeah.
snow and so forth. Um, I love C.S. Lewis, but I'm different than most folks. I'm a big fan of his Out of the Silent Planet, which was his science fiction stuff. I don't,
Oh,
and
I haven't heard that one.
it's amazing. It's amazing. And my like I'm a little bit of a science fiction guy, so
Yeah,
I kind of
yeah.
prefer it. But the thing he did with Narnia, great world building and great lore behind it, maybe a little heavy on the Christian allegories for some viewers.
He did. He did. And look, the other thing that you got to remember is he borrowed a lot. So, um, and we'll go on to the other. I won't preempt the other ones that are coming up,
Yeah,
but
some of
you
these
can,
are going to tie into each other.
yeah, you can kind of see where he borrowed a lot. Like, for example, there's the Snow Queen. There is, and like you said, the Christian allegory with Aslan, dying, being brought back to life.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but a lot of it seems for what, and he took a lot of different ideas and kind of meshed it together. So you do get that play when he built the world, that it's a whole bunch of different thoughts being kind of merged into one, if you will. So, and it had that very Enid Blyton feel to it. The England close to the war.
Yeah,
that war feel to it.
pre-war England.
Correct. And the Secret Seven, Famous Five, it even had some of those adventure tropes built into it. So,
Right.
but the world itself, I felt, was very much all the things he liked in everything else. He liked the Snow Queen. He liked this. He liked a lot of those type of stories, and just goes, you know what? This is going to be my world. Every element I like, I'm going to mix it together to form Narnia. Did you get that sense too? That a lot of it seems to be very heavily borrowed. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But it was quite
I'd
a
agree. I'd agree with that assessment, and I think that he did it in a creative way,
yep,
but maybe not the most original of the world
yep,
building. It just all linked together very well.
yep.
And I think for our next one, this is our number 10. It's a little bit more original, and it has some thematic links with Narnia. Our number 10 is Oz by L.
Yep.
Frank Baum. And
Uh,
he had a little bit more, I would say, again, this is one man's opinion, but a little bit more of an imaginative take on what Oz was going to look like and what type of
yep.
characters were going to be in the cities and so forth.
Oh, definitely. So look, I really like. It's probably one of the more classical ones. And again, I always like to tie it back to say the movie where it starts off black and white and then it
Right.
moves into color halfway. Um, One thing that it is interesting is that the borrowing, it's very much the themes that are in it is very much the world is very bland and bleak. And again, this was, if I remember, it was set in the American Depression.
Right.
Depressions. If
Correct.
again, if I'm wrong, please correct me. But I believe it was set
Yeah.
in Depression, and so it was very much escapist. So that's why everything was brightly colored. Everything was, um, you know, very very clear, because in that era there were a lot of things going wrong, and it wasn't really clear, what was right, what was wrong all the time. In Oz, it was very, very simple. But the one that I did like about the story was thematically, it then by the end of it flipped it over the head. When you think the Great Oz was the one who runs the world, but he was basically a charlatan. You know,
Right. Yeah.
well, spoiler alert: if you haven't read it, it I
Right.
can't help you. It's like, uh, I am your father. It's too late. It's part of a, but to then flip it at the end, it's to say, you know what, he was a charlatan the whole time, and the whole time you could have just tapped the shoes and gone home. I loved it because that, even in terms of world building, it flips the switch quite a lot. That, you know what, this world was the whole not clear. Although it was bright and beautiful, it was um, all make believe. And
Yeah, you make a good point, Stephen, in that the world of Oz, while beautiful and shining on the outside, even in the story, it's a little bit of a facade. And in
yeah,
the background, everything's a little dark, and some of the characters have more sinister motives, I guess we would say.
oh, absolutely. So, and where if you go back to her real world, where it's, again, talking about a movie where it's black and white, but at least that real world was real. The people there who, I think Art actually really cared about her. They actually were worried about her. While in Oz, they really didn't care all too much. And
Yeah, good point.
and so thematically, and that's probably the reason why it's really interesting, because they actually juxtapose two real worlds against each other, and you find that the more boring world was actually the world which has a lot more heart in it. So I thought it was really well done.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a good take. I hadn't thought of it that way. And another interesting part is if you saw the first Oz movie and then the second one, Return to Oz, a noticeably darker film and what I would consider bizarre characters. Remember, there's the guy, his arms are on wheels, and they had the first robot too, which was TikTok was the robot in that film. And just that there's a noticeable difference in the tone of those two films.
Look, I actually haven't seen the second one. It's actually something I got to put on my list. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, it's bizarre.
I have to add it to my list. It sounds interesting. I have to check it out. I never knew it existed, so I have to check it out.
Well, I would love to hear what you think of that one. For our number 9, we're going to change this up just a little bit. And this almost didn't make the list because remember, I mentioned it's got to have 3 installments of something.
Yeah.
And our number 9 is The Last of Us. And it just barely made it. Here's the reason it made the cutoff. Because there were 2 video games and 1 HBO adaptation.
I know, and it's gone crazy.
It's gone crazy. What's your take on the subject matter?
I love it. I absolutely love it. Like, and quick aside, uh, video games are an art form, absolute art form. They hire proper creatives. There are video game stories which are much better than the movies that are out there right now, and not by a little bit, but like some of the Witcher. There's a whole joke that
Yeah.
if you ever play the Witcher video game series, it's an semi-open world, so you can go on your side quest, and you got this main thing to do. But every once in a while, you go, you know what? I'm bored of the main quest. Let's just go to this farm and see what happens here.
Right.
But what they found was a lot of these like side quests, the stories involved are much better than the episodes that have been released. No, and I'm
Yeah.
not talking in terms of just a little bit, in terms of the quality of writing, in terms of like,
Sure.
again, just touching on Witcher one last time, that would jump off.
I love
Um,
The Witcher. It's okay.
Okay, cool. The Witcher has the basic premise, and this is usually the basic premise is he goes and Gerard hunts a monster.
Right.
He find one of two things happen. Either the monster is totally evil and he needs to, but there's something sinister driving the monster that he also has to stop. So he stops the monster and he stops the thing behind it. The second usual big plot line is the monster isn't what it seems. It's usually something that's good or misunderstood or whatever, and it's usually somebody else that's evil. So that's the two basic Witcher plot lines. But in the video game, you have all sorts of different ones. You have actually those one which is really fantastic. It was a person having an affair, and this is actually really, really good storytelling. And so she was having an affair. The two guys were unaware of each other. They started blaming each other, and it was just really well done of dragging through the
I
whole
remember.
nuance of
Yeah,
all
I
that.
remember that. Sure.
Yeah, and dragging through the whole nuances of that, where you know what, the two guys aren't actually evil. They're just caught up in a situation. She's actually not all evil. She fell out of love with her husband and found somebody else. Did she do it all the right way? Absolutely not, because otherwise there's no conflict. But it was just, and then in the end, it's like, who did you kill? Who's bad? Who's good? And it's just so well done. And the thing is, that's probably one of the things that you don't see nowadays is, and tracking back to Last of Us, that, and even a little bit to The Walking Dead, is there is very, I love shows which there's a distinction between good and evil. There isn't any. There isn't any. It's like, you know what? You didn't do anything bad. It just circumstances have driven
Right.
this situation. So what? But Last of Us, I think is look. It's not. It's ah
You know,
dystopian nightmares. I love it. I absolutely. What's your take on it?
I love it. And, you know, there's some people that will say, and I did play the games first, so I'm a little bit more biased toward the games, but there's some people that say that it is the best written game that was, at least of the last decade or so. It's very well written. And the show, I felt they did a great job being faithful to the characters and the settings. And I'm not as far in as some. I'm like 2 or 3 episodes in. I didn't love the casting as much. Like the one girl has a little bit of a British accent, and that bothered me because she's supposed to be from Texas, but that's a small quibble, of course.
We can let that one slide.
Yeah, I'll let that one go. And I love Pedro Pascal, right?
Look, I love it, The Mandalorian. So
Yeah, he's great in everything. So it's as soon as I heard he was in it, I was sold.
it's actually meant to be a really fun actor to be with because he likes to party, and imagine being on a film set with him.
Yeah, he's supposed to be really fun to hang out with. Hopefully, he'll get him to come on the show one day.
Yeah, he'll be like, "Okay, guys, we're stopping here. Tequila break," and then everyone just walks up.
You know, I wanted to expand on something you said too, and I appreciate that you said this in the sense that video games are art, and it's so important because, and I'm an avid gamer myself, and I try to stay abreast of the latest developments in the software companies. In this case, it was originally developed by Naughty Dog. And who would have thought that, you know, I guess it's 20 years later, it's this smash hit TV show. So my hat's off to them. Good job with that team.
Fantastic.
The lore of the show, I felt they did a great job adapting, because, you know, sometimes things in video games don't quite translate, so to speak. And in this case, what I was concerned about with, you know, you have this race of mutated plants, the cordyceps, which are, well, I guess it's like a fungus is what it is, right? And they are highly aware of sounds, which is kind of how they track everybody. And some of the levels in the game were terrifying with the way they illustrated that. But that fully translated into the TV show, the parts where they're in the museum and trying to get past them using only the sounds. And I thought they did a nice job with the lore.
I know. Look, I think I've only seen in terms of I saw the pilot. I haven't, like you said, I'm not that far into the actual TV series. So I am looking forward to see how well they've done it. So it's on my list. I have, for people who don't know, I've got a list of shows to watch and things to read that grows longer than time. So
like all creators, we have our to read pile keeps getting larger and larger.
It gets larger, and the ones I read, it doesn't shrink it enough that things get added to it. So
sure.
It's horrible.
I feel
It's
your pain.
when I retire, then it'll be like
Yeah.
that's all I'm doing.
And for our next example, and I'd love to hear what you think about this. Now, this one I only read the first book, but I've seen most of the episodes. It says our number 8, Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. Are you a
I've read
fan
the
of his?
books.
Yeah.
I've read the books. I've watched the TV series as well. So we don't talk about season 7 and 8.
Right. Yeah.
Abs-
Yeah. I
abs-
understand there's some controversy there.
oh, look, it's not just controversy. If you think about it this way, there has been global phenomenons that's gone through. And I'm even talking like Seinfeld and Friends, I would even class that into that. Where guess what? It's still being talked about, you know,
Right.
however many, like Seinfeld, I think ended like 20 something years ago. They still show repeats on TV once in a while. People still talk about it. Um, but Game of Thrones, if you notice, in terms of the original series, it's dead quiet. That's probably the most glaring thing. Like, there's things people do for controversy and, just to get excitement and stuff going.
Yeah.
There's nothing. It's just dead quiet. It's apathy. It's actually reached that level of apathy that it's so bad. People just. So the books itself, as you probably realize, George R. R. Martin hasn't finished his books yet.
Right. It's still
And
one more to go. Or
yeah,
two, one more. Yeah.
one or two more, one or two more.
Yeah.
Again, depending on how he splits it.
Right.
But look, to be really fair, the first 5 seasons were almost pitch perfect in
Right.
terms of world building. It was absolutely excellent. And the showrunners in the first 5 seasons did an amazing job. They recognized that, in the books they have 5 different characters, and they go, that one character serves the single one role. Guess what? Mushk. In the TV series, it's one character. Because there's already 40 something characters running around the place.
Right.
To have too many, the books is easy for a reader to track, but in terms of TV series, they're going, what? The viewers are going to track these many characters. And if you watch the TV series, it jumps from Cersei to this person to across to Daenerys. Look, it moves all around the world a lot. So, but the one thing which I think killed the franchise in terms of the TV series, more than anything else. By the way, this is not too controversial. It's out there. So the showrunners were actually offered to complete season 7 in 13 episodes. You're saying here, look, 13 episodes, do it justice, do it right. They counted, we'll do it in 6. And they're going, wait, we're giving you the money, we're giving you the resources, do it in 13, do it right. No, we'll do it in 6. And one of the rumors and was behind it was they were actually offered to the showrunners were offered their own Star Wars franchise. So they wanted to close off Game of Thrones to jump onto this new franchise, to pick up a new section of Star Wars.
Oh.
And basically, it's one of those things you can tell they just folded it, absolutely folded it. If you watch some of the interviews where they get asked, "Hey, why did so and so did this?" Oh yeah, they forgot. And it's like, you're the freaking showrunner. People don't forget. You're building this whole world up,
Right.
and you're saying that they just forgot about it. It's like, and so especially when you have this multi-tiered, multi-layered story with all these characters, and you're trying to end it, you can't just forget about characters. You can't just go,
Right.
"Oh, what happened to that? Oh, yeah, forgot about that. Forgot about that." And that's the one. And you gotta remember. And it sounds like it's not. I know there's a bit of entitled fandom that comes with it, but if somebody's invested, say, 6 seasons, you're talking about 6, 7 years of people's lives who have invested into talking about the show, building it out, watching it, enjoying it. For you to just go, you know what? Couldn't care less. It's done. It's very, very depressing. And that's why after the whole controversy, after the whole, there's now apathy where, you know what? For example, and people will still go back. And there's another series which people always go back to rewatch every so often, especially the long limited edition ones. And I won't say it because it's actually on the list.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, we're coming to it.
There's a particular movie trilogy that people still go back and watch. Every so, like everyone, movie marathon, what are we going to watch? This series beginning to end.
Right.
Director's edition, uncut, 12 hours of our lives.
Right.
No,
And by the way, I am that guy. I often go back, especially if I'm trying to cultivate new ideas for a script, or to, in our case, you and I are going to talk about world building. Sometimes I'll watch some of these classics in the hope that it'll rekindle my inspiration. And it often does for me.
yeah. But if you notice, Game of Thrones doesn't have that anymore. It's
Yeah.
absolutely like
Well,
you
and
don't hear people.
you
Yeah,
said it the
sorry.
best. When you say that the fan base has apathy, that is the worst thing you can have, because it's almost better if they're angry about something, because at least you've got some passion attached to it.
Yeah,
Apathy is like, I don't even care anymore. That's
exactly. It's absolutely reached that stage, pure love of the original season. But in terms of world building, it's fantastic. It is like there's
yeah.
different sections of the world. Look, one of the things that actually really hurt the show is actually because of the world building elements, because it was world built so well that, again, not spoil too much of the story. You had the North and you had King's Landing down south. So, so initial storyline was they moved from the North down to King's Landing. So they basically did that whole trip. It took months for them to reach from one end here. And it felt like it was months because, and as people traveled all through the world, it took time. One thing that season 7 and season 8 did really badly was they teleported. It was basically, I need this character to be from the south or to the north. How long is it going to take them? 10 minutes, 1 day, boom, they're there. When you've established early in the world building that two places were really far
Far
apart.
apart. Exactly.
And it took weeks and months for them to travel from one place to another. And then just to close off your story, they're there the next day and they disappear. So there were a lot of those elements where you're going, and there's actually a lot of elements in the world building where it says, why can't we do this? There's no way our army could reach there in time. That's actually, that's quite a lot of things. Why can't you protect, so and so? It'll take too long for our armies to march, to organize. So a lot of the world building was real, that it took time for an army to come back to defend the city because the army it takes time to raise the army, it takes time to, get the march, it takes time to. But in the last few seasons, it's like, oh wait, we need an army to protect this. Here we go,
Here's
we're
the
done.
army. Yeah. Lazy
How long did
writing.
it take? It was really lazy writing, and if you know the story behind why it was basically they were actually offered double the number of episodes to do it.
I didn't
And they
know
decided,
that. Thank you for sharing that. I wasn't aware of that part.
and once a lot of the look, like you said, people will have anger in the series when they found out, or when they watched it and it didn't fit up to the ideal, which is fine. That's absolutely fine. But when they found out the show writers folded home, that they were offered, hey, here's more episodes, here's what we want to do. Now we're not going to do it because we want to move on. That's where the apathy sunk in. It's like, if you don't care enough to finish it properly, we won't care enough to support it. And I think that shift over the last thing, like you don't hear of Game of Thrones rewatch parties.
Right.
Never
Good
happens.
point. Yeah, good point.
I've heard of, and look, it'll probably come up. I hear Star Wars rewatch parties. I hear Lord of the Rings rewatch parties.
Yeah,
God
yeah.
knows, I'm still part of those. But you never hear of Game of Thrones rewatch parties. It just doesn't happen. Absolutely
Well,
does not happen now.
you have a great point there, and I'm going to ask you this same question because it's going to tie in here to our next one. So for number 7, this is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Okay, so
People rewatch those from Iron Man every once in a while.
They do. And where I'm going with this is, what a great job of world building, right? Originally created by Stan Lee and many, many others. And it sort of started off so strong and so cohesive. But some would say that the best days of the MCU are now behind us. What's your thoughts on that?
I have to agree, and there is a reason for it. This is my take on it. And number one, because it's not like the comics where the characters you can basically probably keep a character's age where they are. Guess what? Chris Evans will grow old. It breaks my heart. I think he's awesome as Captain America.
Yeah, I dug
Robert
him
Downey
too.
Jr. wants to do different projects. He's going to grow old. Like Hugh Jackman doesn't want. He's come back one more time. But on the whole, they don't want the actual actors themselves will age out of the franchise. Again, not like the comics where they're perpetually whatever you want them to be.
Right.
but in the actual cinematic universe, in this world you're building, they will age out because they are people grow old. Now you have one or two options. So these characters which you people have loved and absolutely enjoyed, because what they said is I think it was what was it? The guy who played Falcon, he actually had a really cool comment. The MCU has changed it from superstars into super characters. So you are not interested in Chris Evans, the character. You are interested in Captain America.
Oh, okay.
And he contrasts this to say the early 80s and 90s, where I don't know if you remember. I'm a child of the 80s and 90s as well. You would
Yes, sir.
say, what do you want to watch? What movie do you want to watch? I want to watch the new Arnie movie. It wasn't I want to watch the new Predator movie or whatever. I want to
Right.
watch the new Arnie movie because
Sure.
what's he doing? I don't know.
It didn't
Watch the
matter.
new Arnie movie.
Yeah.
Watch the new Van Damme movie. Watch the new Steven Seagal movie. So
Stallone.
yeah, exactly. So those were
Yeah.
the superstars of the 80s and 90s. So you tend to watch movies based on that superstar. Um, and you watch, why do you watch it? Arnie's in it. That's my reason. But it's now shifted across, say, the last 20, 30 years. It's now you watch it because of the character or because of the franchise. What do you want to watch? Let's watch the new Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
Who's the lead? I don't care. It's a new Star Wars movie. Let's go
Yeah.
watch it. Why do you want to watch this one? Oh, it's the new MCU movie. Who's the superstar? Doesn't really matter.
You
Watching
know,
it because
I'll jump in here and say,
yeah,
for me, I think the Star Wars universe is stronger when they put unknown characters in the roles. And of course, they always become big stars, okay?
yeah.
But, sometimes people do cameos and things. And to me, it's a little bit disruptive of the Star Wars universe. Again, one man's opinion, but
Oh no,
it's,
100% agree with that one as well.
yeah,
And
because they're supposed to
I
be
know
somebody
that
you
one's
don't
on the
really
list as
know.
well. Yeah, and I know that one's on the list. So we can,
Yeah, yeah,
but
we'll
back to
save
the yeah, yeah.
that.
But back to the MCU part, because these characters will naturally age out. You then got your choice, and this is where it's going to be right now. They say it's very a disruptive time for the Marvel Cinematic Universe because you have your stalwarts like Iron Man, and he's gone. Captain
Yeah,
America, he's gone. So all, and even Chris Hemsworth says he doesn't want to do another Thor movie now.
yeah,
So you've got all these people who built, say, phase 1, 2, and 3, going, you know what? We're out skis. Like
yeah,
Chris Hemsworth, he discovered through another show that he's actually genetically predisposed for a particular disease. And he's going, you know what? I don't want to take the risk anymore. I want to spend more time with my family. All
sure.
power to him. Absolutely all
Right.
power to him. But you can see all your phase 1 big names, they're all aging out of your universe. And if you have your universe based on these characters, what do? Do you recast? And there's that option. Do you recast these
Yeah.
characters with different people?
I don't know. Maybe it is time for a reboot. And I'll tell
Yeah.
you why I say that is because, and now I love the MCU, and I
Mhm.
think it is one of the better examples of world building, and it's the most seamlessly integrated. Like they're hand in glove. Some of the, Daredevil knows Spider-Man, and Spider-Man knows Thor, and like it really works. But that said, you brought up a good point, which is the characters are aging out. Like a 60 couple year old Iron Man is not going to quite feel right, of course. And
Exactly.
how do you reboot them all? Do you reboot one at a time? I don't know. But I know
So,
that people aren't too excited about some of these upcoming movies. We're to the D and E level characters.
yep. So the tack they've taken, and again, look, it's their decision. The tack they've taken is not to recast. So you don't have somebody who looks at Robert Downey Jr. becoming the next Iron Man. It's not a recast. Uh, and they're not rebooting, so they're not restarting the universe again. What they're doing is they are basically handing mantles over. So I think in like Wakanda Forever, they introduce Ironheart, who is going to be the new Iron Man. Uh, no, it's
Right,
going to take on a new Iron Man.
right,
You have, and Wakanda Forever also you had with Chadwick Boseman's passing. That was actually a different situation. You have
right.
now Shuri taking over the mantle of the Black Panther. And what you've noticed is you've got all these characters slowly moving on. Like in the Hawkeye series, you had Kate Bishop basically taking over Jeremy's mantle already.
Yeah,
So they're kind of moving it to, and in the comics, the Young Avengers, they're moving it to those characters. The problem that you have is that you have all these fans invested in the original characters, and you move into characters they've never really heard of, and that's a little bit of backlash, I would imagine. So
Yeah.
look, to be fair, I don't have the answer for the MCU. I wish I did. I wish I could say,
Right. It's a hard
boom.
one. It's a
Yeah.
hard one. And I don't know the answer either. I can tell you
Yeah.
that you hit the nail on the head when you said that the next generation of fans is very different from the prior generation.
Mhm.
Like the original generation of fans, and I'm not saying one's better than another.
Mhm.
I get it that there's two generations. But originally there was nostalgia. Everybody loved Iron Man and Captain America and this kind of thing. And I'm even okay when the characters are what they call reimagined or
Mhm.
recast with another person of color, or maybe it's a woman now. That stuff's okay with me as long as the story is good.
Yep.
But sometimes what we get is sometimes the story hasn't been maybe as good as we hoped it was. Wakanda Forever was supposed to be really good. I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah. Well, the only other thing that they've done, and um, they've also done a lot of experiments. Like for example, Eternals,
Yeah.
and I would say more than anything else, your cardinal sin in a Marvel Cinematic movie is to make it boring. The
Yeah.
cardinal sin is absolutely make it boring. So Chloe Zhao, who actually directed Eternals, she's only directed 2 indie films before the Eternals.
Right.
That's her resume. 2 indie films before Eternals, and she was given, 100 millions of dollars to run this huge franchise. And the problem with Eternals more than anything else, it was a boring, boring film.
I got to
It
agree
was
with you there.
slow. It
I only
was,
watched about a half hour of it. I keep saying, oh, I'll go back and finish it. And I never did.
and it's not even worth the finish. That's probably the worst part of it.
Yeah.
So the problem that you have is you're going to have your hits and misses. Like, have you seen Doctor Strange 2?
Yeah.
Look, in terms of the look, Doctor Strange 2, I give a pass because at least it was exciting.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was. But in terms of the story, it was really, I didn't enjoy it at all.
It's a little
But
goofy.
no, that's the thing is, if you're going to deal with a multiverse, you need to go really crazy. But they didn't. It was, in terms of the multiverse concept, like I said, boring is the most dangerous part of world building. Tie back to thing.
Right. Right.
Doctor Strange Multiverse was boring in terms of its world building. You have now every multiverse concept out there, and you don't play with it. It's like
Yeah.
evil Doctor Strange, boom. This it was like, God, you could have. And the thing is, the montage sequence when he was jumping track, you have Paint World, you have this world. If you watch another multiverse movie, everything, everywhere, everything, all at once. I don't know if you see that one with Michelle Yeoh.
I haven't, but I've heard good things.
It's best movie of last year, easy best movie of last year. They had, okay. What happens if people have sausages for fingers? I mean, just like, if you're going to go the whole multiverse concept, you go crazy.
Lean into it.
Have fun with it. What happens in your multiverse? Oh yeah, somebody's a little bit more evil here, somebody isn't. It's like, that's probably, characters look the same. Amy Adams she's a scientist, not a doctor.
Yeah.
Seriously, that's how far you're leading into your whole multiverse thing.
Yeah.
So in terms of world building, Doctor Strange, Multiverse Madness, it's not.
Not one of your favorites.
No, because of the possibilities, and that's probably you made, and anything that's absolute fear is, you made it boring. You made the multiverse boring. Now, if you watch the Loki series, that was fun. Like when he led into all the different multiverse. I don't know if you saw the Loki series.
I did.
That was fun. You had all Loki, you had this Loki, you had this
alligator.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why didn't we see it out in Doctor Strange 2? Why didn't we see oh God knows, a panda Doctor Strange? Doctor Strange as a physical panda.
Right.
You understand all the stuff they could have done. Where was panda Doctor Strange? Wasn't there.
Good call.
Where was dog Doctor Strange or cat Doctor Strange? You know what I mean? If you're going to lead into a multiverse, while in Loki, they decided, you know what? I'm going to have some fun with this.
Let's go for it.
Let's absolutely go for it. Doctor Strange, it was so, there I said, world building, it was boring.
I tell you what I'm hearing, Stephen, I think you should write the next one. It sounds amazing.
Oh man, I would love to. If you want to, I'm easy to find, please reach out. But like, I just thought with Doctor Strange, it was it did the cardinal sin of being boring in terms of world building. Story wise, it was pretty exciting. You know, you follow the beats. It was constantly moving. World building wise, it was
Could have done more.
Even the one night element. Oh, we have a one night world where she has the two kids and she's happy. Really? Why not show where the two kids are crazy, evil? Why not show this? Why not show this? Oh, nah.
You have a pretty good point there. That's a pretty good point.
So
the one part, my favorite part of it was, and I thought this was original, where they had the battle with the musical notes.
I did enjoy that one.
That was
I really did.
Yeah,
that was different. And the thing is, like seriously, that's the one thing. Magic in world building is very difficult because you have to have enough that it is still magical, that it's still unexpected, and you still have enough that it's constrained. It's magical systems are very difficult to write because you don't want it to be Deus Ex all the time, where I've just got the spell for that situation solved.
Right. You know, you make a great point here, and I'm going to use this to segue into our number 6. Number 6. Fictional world, Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling.
And now she did a really good job with her magical system.
A very strong system of lore and world building. Yeah.
So, number one, let's talk about, she defined what can and can't be done with magic.
Right.
And she also left a lot of things very ambiguous, which I loved. So she acknowledged that to use a spell, you need to say a name and all the rest of it, and you need a wand. So she established a lot of basic premise for her magical system. But she also said there's a lot of things they don't quite understand how it works. Like they said how Harry Potter lived is her mom's love for him gave that last shield, a magical shield that caused the killing curse to be rebounded. And they never explained how that worked, but I loved it so much that it's so story tied in. You didn't need to explain that part of the world. It was, you know what? That makes perfect sense. And there's certain things that Voldemort can do that you just expect him to do, but it's still tied in very, very tightly of what he's capable of. Like, for example, he doesn't just snap his fingers and he wins. It isn't that. You know he's really, really powerful. You know he's much stronger than everybody else, but he's still tied into the certain rules. He still needs to say the name of the killing curse. He still needs to do certain things. It's just that he's willing to delve into magics that other people just don't dare touch, like, you know, the Horcruxes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I thought she did an absolutely brilliant job. I also like her idea of the world within a world, which is basically...
What do you mean by that? What do you mean?
We see the world as it is, but there's platform 9 3/4.
9 3/4, sure.
Sorry.
I was gonna say, I like the idea too of, I thought it was clever, the different houses, and there's a very cool bestiary of these different kind of creatures. And I think that one of the great elements of world building is when you have weird creatures, and do they feel like they fit? And I think in the Harry Potter world, they really feel like they fit.
Oh, definitely. Look, I have to say, she did an absolutely fantastic job with it. And the whole point is all these rules are very... So Harry Potter served besides being the protagonist, Harry Potter served one really, really functional role in the books, which is what they call the everyday man role. So anytime you're introducing somebody to a brand new world or a brand new situation, it's always good to have this everyday man character, because it allows us, the reader, as everyday man, to experience the world through this character's eyes. So Harry had no idea the magical world existed. So every time they explain something to Harry, they are actually explaining it to us.
To the reader,
it's a really, really good writing device to do so. So I'll give you another example where the everyday man wasn't the main character. Ghostbusters. So if you watch the Ghostbusters movie, you had basically Dan Aykroyd or whatever. All of them were the big scientists. So when they were trying to explain stuff to us, it was always slightly over everybody's head, because it was always, it's too much, we don't quite understand it, or whatever. But there is a character, Ernie Hudson, if I remember right, as Winston.
Right. Yeah, Winston.
He was the everyday man character. So a lot of the big plot points when they explain how things work, it was always Ernie going, "What? What's happening?" They explained to him, and he's going, "You guys are still idiots. I have no idea what's happening." But the fact of the matter is, he wasn't the main character, but these three guys are the scientists who are already embedded in the world. So they're not going to keep explaining the world to the reader. They needed that early character to actually have the world explained out. Again, creatively, how you can use, especially with world building, you don't want to, the worst thing you can do with world building, I find, is to narrate the world. And look, there's so many times where a lot of creators are really guilty of it. Narrating the world means this: you spend 20 minutes every beginning or throughout the whole thing explaining how everything works. Um, it's really badly done. You want it that if you're going to world build explain it, it has to be through the character's eyes, or it has to be through the plot where the world is revealed. The last thing you want is, imagine Ghostbusters, they spend a 10-minute montage explaining how glows are ectoplasms and basically doing a lecture to you. That's
Right.
very, very boring
Right.
writing. You want it that it's fit into the story or fit into the characters that the world is revealed. Um,
That's a
so
great way
yeah,
to put it. And man, I tell you, writers, and like I say, I've been following your work, and we're going to back our way into this too. But you could learn a lot from what Stephen just said, which is the revelation should be in the form of an everyman learning it for the first time, the same as the reader is, and not in a way that he's being lectured to as if somebody's reading it out of the operator's manual.
exactly. So and that's where Harry Potter was perfect,
Yeah.
because he was learning about the world the same day you were learning about the world.
Yeah.
So as he's learning about the spells and stuff like that, you were learning at the same time. While if you say, hypothetically, if it was done through Draco's eyes in Harry Potter, he would have all these world knowledge already, which the reader doesn't have, and he wouldn't explain it to you. He wouldn't spend the time to explain it to you. That's
Yeah.
why the Harry Potter character. The other thing that everyday bad characters do, which is really nice in terms of storytelling, it allows the reader to fit themselves into that person. And that's actually where Twilight of all stories does it so well.
Yeah.
Because if you actually read the Twilight books,
I did read
uh,
them. Just a quick comment there.
yeah,
I thought Twilight got a lot of hate, but I thought it was pretty good.
oh, for what it is, it's done really well. And
Yeah.
one of the things that why Twilight, and if I explain this to you, you actually would say Twilight's main audience was young women, and who like who wanted that romance supernatural genre, which really didn't exist at the time too much. Go back, look at how many times they describe Bella Swan. Look at Bella Swan's description throughout the books. Plain, normal. He doesn't actually get described very often. Most of the descriptions are of Edward and whatever. She herself, and I'll try to bring up the quote where Bella Swan was described. Say Bella Swan description. She's actually described as someone who's really, really okay. Bella is described as clumsy, weak constitution, adverse physical event. She's recluse, insecure, and very. But if you look at how she's described in the book, that's the target audience who wants to read Twilight.
Right,
That's
exactly.
exactly the Twilight's target audience. So books are immersive. So if you were a teenage girl hoping for this wild, crazy romance and two really hot guys after you, when you read Twilight, you kind of think, hey, at least on a subconscious level, I'm Bella.
Yeah,
I
of
love
course.
this.
I totally agree with that.
And by having Bella as the everyman character and having her as the plainest of the everyday man, like Harry Potter wasn't a plain character; he was actually very detailed. But Bella was very, very plain, because what it wanted you to do was it wanted the reader to become Bella, to really get into the story. And hey, props to the writer. Like, you have to recognize where they did a really good job. Absolutely excellent, because
Yeah.
that allowed the reader to be immersed in your story and really enjoy it. That's why I didn't do too well with guys, because you couldn't fit yourself in quite that way, because
Right.
you didn't want a romance with two hot guys in that world. Uh, and but for Bella's character, again, it hit its demographic really, really well.
I do admit that when I was exposed to those books, it was my daughter. I had a daughter who was 12, or she might even been 12 or 13, right around there. But anyway, she was so inspired by these books. They used to have what they call a midnight release. These books would come out at midnight the night before, and she'd be like, man, I've got to get this. She would have like a space reserved on her bookshelf, and she was really into it. So I was like, well, I got to check this out and see what all the fuss is about. And I found them to be pretty well written.
Yeah. The whole point would be, you might have enjoyed it, but you want the audience. You want the ones who would go crazy over it, because, again, Stephanie Meyer, all props to you. Very well done. And
she found her market. She found her market. Yeah.
But
could have been a little scarier. I would say, for werewolves and vampires, it could have been a little bit scarier. But hey, it's a love story.
It was a love story. It was a love story. It was a love story. To be fair to the audience it was targeted at, it was perfect. Could not. Yeah. You didn't want too much blood gore or whatever. You wanted enough mystery, intrigue, but you didn't want to. But back to the J.K. Rowling one, having that world within a world where you see the world as UK London, but there's this layer below it, which is the Ministry of Magic, and even have it. What's that? Oh, you think it's a telephone booth, but it's actually a secret portal.
Right?
I do like that whole world within world ideas. So. Again,
nice job by J.K. Rowling. We're going to lean away from magic a little bit and go more toward dystopian realism in the case. And this one's a video game too. That does make a spot on our list. This is our number 5, Fallout. Now, are you a fan of Fallout?
I played a little bit, not too much, but I did really. Again, it's in terms of games, it's still a grind game, which means the more time you invest in it. Like Diablo, the more time you invested in. So
right.
I didn't grind all the way to do everything, to be really fair. But Fallout, I think, was really interesting because, it's the whole, you open up the bomb shelter and you're going.
It's a new world, right? And they've got some great world building too. You got the Brotherhood of Steel, which is the tech guys. You got, of course, there's the mutants out there in the countryside. You've got the California Republic, and everybody has their own set of rules and how they operate. In the new one, of course, you have the Institute, which is the rights for synthetic people, which are, kind of ties into artificial intelligence. And, I was a fan ever since, not since the original, because it's been around a long time. I guess originally it was released by Interplay and then has become a Bethesda property. But I've invested quite a few hours in Fallout 4, and number 3 I played the whole way also.
Oh, cool. Look, but I think the coolest aesthetics of Fallout Boy, which actually Marvel stole, is Pip-Boy.
Oh yeah, for real.
Marvel stole it. Like Miss Minute is Pip-Boy. Again, back to Loki series. It was stolen. And like I said, you can borrow elements, but I thought that was again, Pip-Boy was the one who's actually explaining a lot of stuff to you in a really, really cool way. And again, not everything has to be that everyday bad. That's a trope that you can use. But Pip-Boy, I thought, was fantastic. It's like, this, you're gonna die, but this is how you're gonna die. the graphic comes up.
Yeah.
I thought that was really well done in terms of introducing different things. Look, when you're world building, it's always interesting the way people impart the knowledge of the world. It's always very interesting how they do it. And I think Fallout, and the good thing is, because it was a video game, it's actually a little bit more easier for video games to impart how the world works, because there's usually a tutorial to explain the game mechanics.
Right.
So you got that little bit more, that it doesn't have to kind of fit into a story narrative. It's, if you want to shoot the guy, here's the guns you can use, and these are the guns that have this effect, and these are why the guns exist the way they do. It's a very easier way for you to introduce the world. Same with, say, if you play a Witcher type game and they're trying to do the magic system, it is actually very well documented. You press this button, you need this element, blah blah blah, and it's all documented through. So the world is actually introduced through the game mechanic.
Yeah. Well, and you have a great point there too, that it's all related through the use of this Pip-Boy. You raise your wrist and, well, where am I going? Well, check your map. And what am I doing when I get there? Well, you're looking for this fella. And which weapon do I use? Well, you need this. And it's all kind of right there on your wrist,
I love it, and that's actually where I think video games is. And I never want to discount it. Good video games, which incorporate the game mechanics, because it's you still have to play it into the story. I always think are very very well done. That you can incorporate both the storytelling into the way the game is being played, and I always think that's you do it well. It's basically you've reimmersed the character, the reader or the audience into it really easily. And that's all world building is to give it believable enough and tell them enough that they believe the world exists. And if you can do that, that's
You got it,
absolutely
man.
key.
Well, let's keep with our science fiction theme. So our number 4 is the Alien franchise,
Oh,
which, in my opinion, the best two are the first two, Alien and Aliens. And I guess this went on for, well, still going now, actually, if you count Prometheus and stuff like that.
oh, we don't talk about anything past. Alien 3 I can bear with a little bit, mainly
It's not bad.
because it was a budget thing, which again, it's one of those things, if you hear the story behind it, is basically you would think after such a blockbuster movie of Aliens 3, you would get a really, really big budget. But they decided for whatever reason in the world to not give a big budget. That's why it's actually filmed a lot in the prison planet,
Right, the prison movie.
because there wasn't that much money behind it. I don't believe, and I'll get this checked. I don't believe they actually got James Cameron to come back for Aliens 3. I'm pretty sure they did.
No, that's is that David Finch maybe, or
Ah, David Finch. That's correct. And and again, it's always about money and clout and all the rest of it. So the problem that you had was with success of Alien and Aliens thing, James Cameron could say, "Hey, look, I want to make the movie. You give me $100 billion." David Finch didn't have that same clout to go. Give me $100 million to make this Alien 3 movie. He didn't have that much
right.
same push to it. And so with the Aliens world, it's actually really well done in terms of the technology. I also liked it that they kept a lot of the rules constant. When you travel to planet, from area, there is a lot of time dilation. So you got a lot of people who are stuck in. So there was actually a scene, I believe it was a deleted scene, where Ripley actually calls her daughter up back home.
Oh
And the
yeah,
daughter
sure.
is like 80, 90 years old, and Ripley is
Right,
still
because time has kept going while she was in this sleep.
hyper, yeah.
Yeah.
So having those little rules in place actually really adds to the whole world building elements that, you know what? The whole evil corporation, and it tied into the character that you had
Yeah,
this.
you have great corporate themes. It's militaristic.
Yeah. Look, it was really well done. And in terms of sci-fi, look, beyond that, I have to say the one of the reasons I didn't like the Alien franchise post that, the Prometheus or whatever, it's the whole thing is what's the say? Don't drink your own Kool-Aid. Because at a certain point, you've got to say, this is getting really crazy now. You got the engineers who are ex-human.
Yeah.
You dive too much into the lore sometimes. You sometimes need someone to bring you back a little bit and go, that's dumb.
Yeah,
Because
and it's a little hard to follow, And by the way, I like these concepts, and I like that they were trying to find the engineers and stuff, but they went a little bit off the path. Which, at the end of the day, hey, we want to be thrilled by seeing these aliens, and it was a little too cerebral, maybe.
look, there's one problem about world building and character development, which I think has, and this one actually I blame Star Wars for. There's actually a little bit of a Star Wars issue that brought through. The revelation that I am your father, Darth Vader's iconic line. It started tying in that everything needs to be tied up really, really nicely.
Right.
And sometimes by doing that, it distracts from the world, because aliens should just be about this acid, nasty monsters who, who are this apex predator who can wipe out humanity. Did they really need to be tied into an engineer and humanity?
Yeah.
It doesn't, that logically doesn't make sense. It's like, why tie something in which doesn't need to be tied in? And why tie it as humans, like being this mythical it just really messed
They
it
really
up.
didn't. They didn't need all that for the movie. Like
Didn't need
the
all of that.
concept was good that they had found these cave paintings and it led them there,
It-
and that's how they discovered it. But they could have left it at that. They didn't need all the other
That's
stuff.
exactly. And then by having sometimes when you try to make things too smart, it becomes really dumb. And there are things which I just happen. You don't really need everything to be coincidental. Like
Right.
not every chosen like probably the best thing about Harry Potter being the chosen one, going back one franchise, is he actually wasn't the chosen one. If you think about it, he didn't have any ability more than any other character. He was always told he was the chosen one and whatever. But Hermione was better at magic than him. A lot of characters were more powerful than him. He was just a lot of the right circumstance at the right time. There was the whole trope where if Voldemort had gone to Neville first, Neville would have been the chosen one because the prophecy also pointed towards Neville. And the whole, if whoever was writing Prometheus, and I can't remember who it was, this took over Harry Potter, you would find out that Voldemort and Harry Potter were stepbrothers, or they had it's like, you know what? You don't need all that. You know what?
Yeah.
You can have things distinct. Look, Star Wars did it really well with Darth Vader, but I think a lot of writers right now are trying too hard to do all these linkages where it hurts the story a lot more in terms of the world, in terms of the characters, that you have all these linkages through.
Okay, I buy that. Let's see how that links into our next one here. This is our number 3.
Yeah.
It's Blade Runner.
Okay.
And this one was a tough one, Stephen, because it almost didn't make the list because as franchises go, it's not the biggest franchise, right? But it does technically make it because there was 3 versions of the movie, or maybe it's actually 4. But it had such an impact on science fiction. And the reason why I allowed it was because it was also the novel. Of course, it's based on the Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is the Philip K. Dick novel. So technically it's 4 or 5. So okay. But what's your thoughts on Blade Runner?
Look, I love it. 2049, the last Blade Runner was. Look, the one thing I do like, again, for people who do watch Blade Runner, it's not an action flick. And I keep telling people, it's not an action flick. Take it as a slow burn, and you actually enjoy it a lot more. It deals a lot more with humanity. It deals a lot more about the replicants,
The ethics
But
of
what, correct. But one thing I do really enjoy about the world is actually a little bit, it's cyberpunkish, but the world is actually built on these replicants. And I love the whole idea that when the world develops, it's not about the exterior world, if you will. It's a Blade Runner is very much an interior world build. Like you said, you touched on it. It's the ethics. What is AI allowed to do? How far is AI going? If AI is sentient, do we really need to tell them they're sentient? What's a soul? It's all
right.
those internal world building. I'm really glad you did pick this one because, like I said, the cyberpunk world, meh. Anybody could do that. There's much nicer cyberpunk dystopian worlds, but internal humanity introspective worlds, oh man,
This one hits all the
100% give it.
buttons. Hits all the buttons. Yeah, and
100%.
it's also I'm a big Harrison Ford fan to begin with, and we're going to use this to sort of smoothly lead into the next one because it's almost the opposite movie. And here's what I mean by that. You mentioned how Blade Runner is it's a thinking man's movie and it's a slow burn and there's not that much action. But our number 2 is the opposite, which is number 2, Star Wars.
Oh, Star Wars, I love in
Right
terms
away,
of world.
action.
Exactly, and you have a lot of alien races. Look, um, I don't want to be like the prequel trilogy. Have attracted enough criticism as it is already.
Right.
But the one thing that it's the second sequel trilogy movie. The one thing that Ryan Johnson did, which really probably this disenfranchised a lot of the audience, is he wanted the whole subversion trope, and basically he took a lot of the current world elements and just decided, "Nope, I don't care," and subverted it. And I'll tie this back to the Mandalorian, where John Favreau actually was very much, I care. And you can see the two differences in how
Right.
respected. Like so you have the whole concept about the hyperspace. The whole of movie 8 was the hyperspace chase. The rebels were getting away and the fall, and you have the whole joke is, wait, you can travel faster than the speed of light, but the rebel ship is just out of range, and they're just out of range for the entire movie. Are you joking? That's the tension you're building. Now I know what he was trying to do. He was trying to do it like the whole naval thing, like
Yeah.
actually a ship chasing another ship.
Right.
That the smaller ship is just slightly ahead of it. But this is space. We can have faster light travel, and you're telling me that they're just out of range the whole goddamn movie, and that's a tension building. Number one, that was it. The world had already established a lot of rules, and then for you to flip it around, and then you have that the hold on maneuver, which was the most ridiculous thing. Turn the ship around, go to hyperspace, and you can destroy anything. And then you're just going, wait, that exists. The Death Star would have been so easy to you just have suicide bombers all the time.
Right.
And it destroyed everything. If one ship going to hyperspace towards another ship can destroy the other ship, the Death Star never stood a chance because you just have a bunch of X-wings. You don't even need a person there. Have a droid in it. Have the droid go, you know what? Hyperspace start at the beginning of the Death Star. Shoot 5 X-wings that way. Problem solved. Death Star gone. So when you establish all these rules in place, and then you just break it so easily, and the worst thing is, I don't mind rules being broken in storytelling, but even for really bad, but if it's done for good storytelling reasons, it's fine. But it's done for the most laziest storytelling reasons. It's like, okay, we need a way for the rebels to win. Let's invent the hold on maneuver to win. And the worst thing about it is the next movie, as a throwaway line, one of the guys go, why don't we just use the hold on maneuver to destroy the Empire? Oh, we can't do it again. Never mention again. It's really bad when you backtrack all that. So it's
I agree.
This all ties into the world building elements of it. It's like inconsistent world building, breaking rules which damages everything. Again, there's never been mention of fuel and that type of thing in the entire Star Wars thing. And now suddenly fuel is the most basic resource which everybody needs. Wait a minute. The last 7 movies, we've never talked about fuel.
Right.
And
right.
now,
Good point.
Now in number 8, it's wow.
It's critically important.
Other stuff which also irritated was, you can imagine, this is space. You can't drop bombs in space. That's why in all the earlier Star Wars, it's always about laser fights. But in number 8, if you remember, one of the first sequences is they have bombers fly over the dreadnought and drop bombs. It's space. Bombs don't drop.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if you take away all these elements in terms of the world building, bad world building does one thing. It takes the audience out of your story. Like I said, there's a lot of good things like Stephanie Meyer has done for Twilight, which drags your audience kicking and screaming into your book. Bad world building does the reverse. It drags your audience out of the book. And when you do that, now good world building is say Mandalorian establishes set law, establishes set rules, and basically follows that all the way through. For example, the Mandalorians can fly because they have a jetpack. Guess what? Mando doesn't fly straight away. Why not? Doesn't have a jetpack.
Right.
When does he fly? When he gets his jetpack. So you got all these like minor elements, and you also have all these Mandalorian codes where you go, say Bo-Katan, I'm not a true Mandalorian, so my helmet comes off all the time. While Mando is like, whenever he takes his helmet off, it's a significant event because he believes in that creed. And all those are little, really well-built world-building elements that actually really add to the story and the characters. That if you take away an element of it, the story doesn't work. So that's probably why the last scene of, and I pretend it ends there, because that's where my heart ends, where he takes out his helmet and Grogu sees it, and Baby Yoda sees it for the first time, and he starts crying. that's why that scene is so significant, because you have built the world up for the entire, however many seasons, to tell him that Mando will never show his face to Baby Yoda. He just
Right.
won't. He will never show his face to Grogu. And in the end, when there's no threat, like he has taken his helmet a couple of times off, but there's usually a particular reason for it. Is he needs it to get past this challenge or whatever. It's never just because I want, it's never just because. There is always a reason for it. And having that final scene when he takes his helmet off, oh man, breaks your heart, because
Yeah.
it's his decision. And it's like you're breaking your code because you are saying goodbye to Baby Yoda. And like
Better writing there than in most of the Star Wars movies.
Fantastic. No, I'm more concentrated on the world building side of it, and because that fits into the world building element. That helmet, well, Mando takes his helmet at the end. In terms of that world, that is so significant, and that's how come the audience reacts that way so well, because he's showing Baby Yoda his face. He's not meant to. He can't. Why is he doing that? And understand that's the world that was built, and that's one of the and the thing is, that's actually a really, really small world building element that is so significant. Like, Mandalorians don't show their faces if you're part of that sect of,
Right.
Anyway, what's your take? What's
I'm a huge fan of Star Wars, and I have been the whole time. I will say that I don't mind the prequels as much as some people do. Like you mentioned, the latest ones are
the
probably
prequels I'm okay. The sequels are the one which I go.
Yeah, for me, it's more the sequels. I would say they don't hold up as well. But if you remember the first Star Wars, they didn't. It is all world building, and what I mean by this is they don't waste any time explaining what anything is. They just kind of thrust you into it. Like they don't tell you what a Wookiee is or why the Empire is evil. It's just like you're in the middle of it, and part of it is because of the. They use the perspective of course, the two robots, C-3PO and R2-D2, and they don't really know what's going on, and it kind of doesn't even matter. You're just along for the ride on this great adventure, right?
If you notice, and getting back to the trope, Luke Skywalker is your everyday man.
Yeah, very much so.
He was on the farm. He had no idea about this. And it's like, here, Luke, what's this? I have no idea what this is. Oh, it's a lightsaber. Wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
But
And
you notice,
I think you have a great point in that one thing they do in Star Wars to its detriment is to try and tie up a lot of these loose ends. Sometimes it's okay to have loose ends. I think when they try and prove that everybody is somebody's father and that Obi-Wan knew him the whole time, it's like, wait, it doesn't really make sense. Why doesn't he recognize R2-D2 then? And why, some of it doesn't quite add up.
Like, for example, again, pick on the sequel trilogy. Why couldn't Rey just have been Rey?
Right.
The main character, she could have just been Rey. She could have just been really force-attuned, badass, Jedi. That would have been fine. Why did she need to be Palpatine's clone's daughter?
Which honestly, that makes it a little weaker, I think.
It makes it horrible. It really does. It, especially since there was no hintage of anything anywhere about it, and it was just dropped into the viewer's lap and going. So Palpatine had kids who the Force skipped a generation to have. It's like none of it makes sense, and trying to tie up all these loose ends, and was no loose end to tie up. Just make her an absolute badass Jedi.
Right. Yeah.
And the way to actually have made Rey a bit more interesting, or at least a bit more immersive, is that's the one thing that Rian Johnson did well, I think, in the movie 8. It's basically saying, like, you know what, anybody could have been a Jedi. You know what I mean? It's all out there, and making that a bit more immersive. What it then does is it then says, look, if you're a person watching Star Wars, you go, hey, in that universe, that could have been me. All I needed to do was to believe, and I suppose that's where they got rid of. I think that's the one thing the prequel trilogy I think did was really incorrect. Midi-chlorians. That's the one element I think that was introduced in world building, which is really bad, because throughout the normals, the 4, 5, and 6, it was always what you believed, how much the Force flowed through you, how much you allowed to. it was a little bit more spiritual, mystical.
Spiritual. Yeah.
Which meant if I attune myself, if I believed, if I let force flow through me, I could be this wonderful Jedi.
Sure.
And what 1, 2, and 3 did, which was really horrible, was if your mini chlorine cloud isn't this high, nah,
You can't be a Jedi, right?
you can't be. It's like, and that storytelling wise and world building wise, it's horrible to do that because you got to remember, you want to immerse the reader. And look, the reader's never going to be a Jedi. That's yeah. But you want them when they watch to think, hey, wait, that could be me. And also having all these sometimes linkages removes it a little bit. Oh, imagine you're watching this. I could be Rey. I could be this absolute badass thing. Oh, wait, I don't want to be Palpatine's granddaughter. So I'm not, I can't be. When you world build and you tie all these things up, remember, you want to immerse your reader, viewer, audience into that world. Stop doing things to remove the audience out of it.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Like, seriously, I don't think I'm a fantastic writer or anything like that. But you gotta think the people who are writing this are monsters of money with all this experience, with all these credentials, and yet they're doing all these things to remove the audience out of your world. And you're just going, why? Why are you putting, like, in terms of, say, the whole Mandalorian thing, having his face covered, I think was an absolute genius stroke, because everybody who's watching goes, wait, I don't know who's under that mask. That could be me.
Right. Yeah.
It's a really subtle element, like stuff like that, which allows the reader to become that character, to immerse themselves into that world. God, you've done it right. Now, if you found out that Mando was the son of such and such, which couldn't be, blah, 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 you just go, you know what? That's not me. I can't do that. But you want it enough that they could semi-believe the main character is them. And if you can build a world where that agrees to you, you will have a really strong audience who will follow it.
I'd agree with that. And I would say that to me, and I'll be curious to see what you think about this, the best example of world building and the best example of lore currently to this day is probably still our number one, which is Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien.
A really good pick. And I cannot argue with that at all.
Yeah. And, that's something where I'm going to start with just a couple of basic things, which is, let's start with the language, right? Like he's got each race speaking a different language. And of course, Tolkien even wrote out his languages and vocabularies and even the phonetics of these languages. It's amazing.
Yeah. So Tolkien he built the environment. He had the rules and laws. He had language and culture. God damn it, he had history going back all the way through. You know what I mean? It was fantastic. Look, the one thing I think Tolkien did, good story has 3 big elements to it: world building, plot, and characters. Plot-wise, I again read the books. They are a bit slow. And I use the example that if you read Lord of the Rings as it is, 100 pages in, they haven't left the Shire yet.
Right.
They're still talking about Bilbo's party, for God's sake.
Yeah, well, the Council of the Ring, right? They say if that was made today, they never would have made this book. You got the Council of the Ring is 11 pages trying to decide what to do. Nothing even happens. They're just talking back and forth about what they think they're going to do.
So that's where I think Peter Jackson was great. He was like, cut, exciting, cut, exciting.
Right.
But in terms of a book, with a book, it tends to lend that you can give a lot more details in the book, which again, different mediums, different rules. But books, you can tend to go a little bit overboard with storytelling elements. But what the storytelling elements did was really nice. It basically, you talk about bad linkages, Palpatine's granddaughter is Rey. You talk about good linkages, about how all the kings and all the succession works in Lord of the Rings universe. It was so well done. And that's where I think, have you seen the latest Lord of the Rings, the TV series?
I watched a little bit of the first one.
Okay, so that's where if again, you don't have to finish it, and I try to advise you not to finish it because your heart
Yeah,
will break.
I was
Your
going to say,
heart will
I'm not,
absolutely break.
one of the things, just a quick reminder for the viewers, like we always try and focus on the things that we love and to really
Yeah,
talk about them excitedly. And I
yeah,
try not to like rag on
yeah.
things too much. But if you make a Lord of the Rings property that I can't sit through, you did something wrong. So
It's like,
I'll leave it at that.
yeah. So that's bad linkages.
Yeah.
But again, like I described, and again, but the good linkages are all in JR tokens because you can kind of see, like, for example, why Aragorn didn't want to take up his mantle. Why, and you see how everything links, and it's really well done. That's actually really good planned linkages. And in that world, you can see, you know what? The other thing I really liked was it also gave reasons for all the disparate groups to come together. And I loved it. Why would an
Mhm.
elf hang out with a dwarf? It's actually
Right.
been really well established.
Yeah.
We don't want to hang out with each other. But having them give the reason to hang out, like there's a world-ending threat which needs everybody to do it, and having the characters again explore both elven culture and dwarven culture by the characters talking, by them. So do all dwarven women have beards? Yes, only the pretty ones do. You know, again,
Sure.
that's not the exact quote, so please
Yeah,
don't
I know.
quote me. But by having stuff like that, and then having Gimli rag on and but the funny good thing about that is having those two things in there, you open the world up, both the dwarven, elven, and whatever cultures, without being too heavy-handed. It's really much about because eventually it's all about the character interaction, and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. I love the way they all interplay together.
I love Tolkien's dialogue, and many people would say things like, well, it's too much descriptive passages and it's not enough time between action scenes. And they kind of have a point. But the fact is, to me, that makes it all the more rewarding when you have like these great dialogues. And when
Mm,
we talk about the world building, a lot of the lore of the races is described in the way that they interact with each other.
correct. But and the cool thing about what Tolkien did was like, you want to find out more? Check the appendix out. You want to check,
Right, right. Well, and as
and
I'm fond of saying, all our books come with maps. We make maps for all our books. And I'm inspired by when I read Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion, I looked through all the maps and, oh, here's where they went. And I just love maps.
so I think that's fantastic. So you have it not detract from the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you have it as well that if you read all those appendices, maps, history of, I think he did a whole history timeline, all the rest of it. If you read all of that, it enriches the story. But guess what? You didn't need all that information for the story to happen. So, and like I said, novels give one advantage that comic mediums don't do. Um, so I've actually been lucky enough to actually have to adapt a couple of things for comics from adapted materials. So the one thing I've always said is like there is if you're writing a comic and you have what they call a talking head scene where two people are dialogue talking,
Right. Yeah.
to be really fair, in a book that could go on for quite a few pages, but in a comic that should go for 1-2
One
pages
page.
tops.
Right. Yeah. You're going to have a boring comic if you got too many of those.
Exactly, because you just have basically two heads talking.
Right.
But in a novel, it can go on for a while. In the movie, you can even go on for a while longer because in a movie, you can do bad talking heads in movies is basically you see the back of someone's head and the front of someone's head, and you switch positions all the time. That's
Right.
bad talking heads. Good talking heads in movies is where every inflection point is a change of character, uh, emotions, and the absolute classic for that is A Few Good Men.
Mm.
When Tom Cruise is, to be fair, what happens in A Few Good Men? It, again, it's been a plot
Courtroom.
spoiler. It's basically a whole courtroom drama. Tom Cruise is basically um, going on head to head with Jack Nicholson. Now, the cool thing about that is the entire movie is talking heads. If you think about it, you don't have it's a talking heads movie. But where it becomes really exciting is they use the talking head inflections where they use the characters to convey each emotion. So each talking head becomes almost like an action sequence. So it's like I want the truth. You cannot. It's really, really well done. And but going back to the original point, when you're describing medium adaptation, a one-page fight scene in Lord of the Rings ends up being a 20-30 minute movie sequence.
Right. Yeah.
An 11-page Counts of the Rings ends up being we gotta get rid of the ring. Let's all go. It could end up being a 2-minute sequence in the movie. So understand that mediums have its inherent good and bad, and that's where Lord of the Rings, as its original medium, as a novel, allows itself that description, allows itself that space, which in terms of the movies or even a graphic novel would not have the same adaptation qualities.
Right.
So that's where, if you went back to it, it is almost pure world building there, which is absolutely fantastic.
The classic example of world building, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, without doubt. And even if you just read the appendices, that's enough to keep you happy for quite a while.
It's all in there. It's all in there. Well, that is a terrific list. And Stephen, I want to say thanks for participating in our top 11 here. We had some great choices, and I felt that you really shared some great knowledge about world building. And I know it's one of the things that you specialize in. And I wanted to make sure that we mentioned you are currently having your Kickstarter. It's live right now. That's for TRANSHUMAN. And can you give us a quick pitch for that series?
Okay, so TRANSHUMAN, and I'm gonna use the movie voice, in a world, on the cusp of cybernetics. So in this particular world, cybernetics are not commonplace yet, but they are becoming commonplace. So you kind of start seeing, people with cybernetic eyes, arms, and all the rest of it. So one of the interesting ideas behind it is, and I'm delving into it, is, and I think how many senses do you have as a human?
5.
Actually, close to 30 or 40.
Oh, okay.
I'll give you a couple, and you can sense of balance.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah.
Where's that come? When you step on a floor, how do you know the floor is level or not floor? That's not touch. That's not hearing. That's not sense, smell, or whatever. How do you know the floor is level? It's you have an inner ear, a little bit liquid, maintains a sense of balance. That's a sense. When you walk into a room, how do you know the room's hot? That's not touch. You haven't touched anything yet. How do you know the room's hot or cold? You have different senses. Yeah. So the 5 senses, as they always mention, are very common. But if you actually came down to it, humans have about 30 to 40 different senses beyond taste, touch, smell. So the whole idea is, now, what if you have a cybernetic eye? Like you have 3, and this is going back into a little bit of human biology. You have, say, in the eye, you have three cones, to detect colors. What happens if I give you a cybernetic eye with a 4th cone, and the world now looks totally different because you've got another sense which has a totally different range of colors? How would you react? So it becomes almost the evolution of humanity through technology. So now you got all these elements which you couldn't do before, but you can kind of do now. So it's, to be fair, TRANSHUMAN, especially the first book, it does touch a little bit on, say, the evolution part and a bit of religion and humanity, in terms of how much should we really tinker? How much should we really play around with? So there is the 2 elements there. There is a group called Pure, which is basically saying, hey, look, leave us, humanity should stay the way it is. We should change. And there's also the group of scientists who are going, wow, let's see what else we can come up with. What other things that humans can't perceive right now, but through technology, we're going to give them all these new abilities and things like that. So it is very much the interplay. So that's the world of TRANSHUMAN, about basically the augmentation or the next evolution of humanity. In it, of course, there's the standard story. There's Rivka, who is an ex-soldier, and basically she's been augmented. And so you think, you know what? She's got all this really cool stuff she can do. But you find that her problems are very much human problems. Like, she's going through a divorce. Things aren't going quite right for her. And you know what? it's not like you can just shove it out into cybernetic iron and all your problems go away. It delves into how much technology actually affects humanity and how much, what really does it take to make you human. So yeah,
Yeah.
I actually had really fun writing it. It's
It,
actually
it looks terrific. I've been following it on Kickstarter, and I'll put some links below here. Definitely going to recommend to our viewers to check that out. And by the time this video airs, you're probably going to be down to the last 48 hours or so. So please check it out quickly, guys. You don't have that much time to get on board. But we're really looking forward to seeing the finished product. And I've been following it. It looks terrific, man.
Oh, thank you. Look, I'll definitely send you a copy of the first volume if you want to read it. But it does delve into, look, it's a little bit like Blade Runner. It's not a huge action-packed thing. There are a couple of action sequences, but it's very much in terms of perspectives on what it takes to become a human and how technology plays that part in its role. So, I had a blast writing it, absolute blast,
Well,
and
go ahead, finish.
I actually wish this one was actually a bit more of a novel because I still have to fit a lot of the graphic novel part, which I can't. I would have loved to write 2 pages just describing certain thoughts, and I just go, nah, that's too much.
Well,
But
we'll look forward to seeing that. That will be when do you think fulfillment's going to take place? Is the book already done?
book's already done, so that's
Okay,
that's
good.
all. I'm trying. One of the things which I am working a lot better in is I want to fulfill usually. Look, the digital copy usually gets out after again bit of Kickstarter bits. You get your money about 2-3 weeks after the end of the campaign. So usually the digital copy will be out relatively soon after that. The whole printing process though takes about 2 months. This is proofing, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So digital, you get super quick, super fast because it's easy enough. And the good thing about digital is I make a mistake, I just load a new copy up. So
Nice,
it's
yeah.
what I usually do is with digital, I have a little folder set up, and people can just have people who pledge can get access to that folder to download. So if there is something that needs to be updated, it's actually really simple for me to put a new copy up. Say, hey, look, new copy up. Make sure you get the latest one with more information. It also allows me to put more sketches and more. That's the other thing I like to do is with digital, because it's such a cool medium as well. I tend to put a lot of character sketches and all the stuff that doesn't usually get printed into the digital folder, so people get access to it.
Gotcha.
But the printing process usually takes about 2 to 3 months, and unfortunately, I'm shipping from all the way down under. So if you're in the US, it does take about 3 to 4 weeks to get there. So unfortunately, it is what it is. I can't get it any faster.
Well, we will look forward to that. Viewers, that's TRANSHUMAN. I'm going to put the information below so you can follow that. And Stephen, I want to say thanks so much for coming on and participating in this list. This is a great one, man. I really had fun.
Oh, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And we will look forward to seeing that book. And thanks to the viewers once again for tuning in. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Good night, everybody.